Welcome back to Hot Pizza Ass Podcast. I'm your host, Erin Darling Taralva, and on today's episode, I get to interview someone who has a literal dream job. Kathryn Nicolai from the podcast Nothing Much Happens will be joining us on today's show to talk about how she got the idea to even start her wildly successful sleep podcast and how she created the village of Nothing Much. Now, if you're anything like me, you have been charmed by this podcast, and maybe it's put you to sleep on nights in the pandemic when you really needed some comfort. I know it's been there for me many a night. And I had so much fun talking to Kathryn and learning a little bit more about her POV when it comes to rest and relaxation. So without further ado, here's today's episode with Kathryn Nicolai. Today's episode is sponsored by Ease, where I get many products that help me ease into rest and relaxation at the end of the day. I am a big fan of Mary's Medicinal's Muscle Freeze Cooling Action CBD Roll-On. It is a product that I keep on my nightstand, and I roll it onto my neck and my upper shoulder area where I carry all of my tension. And right before I go to sleep, it helps ease me straight into dreamland. And then I listen to Kathryn Nicolai's podcast. So, highly recommend checking out Mary's Medicinals and other products that you can find at Ease. If you are over 21 and you live in the state of California, head on over to www.ease.com to see some products available there. Use my code DARLING30 to get 30% off your first order. Kathryn Nicolai, I'm so excited to have you on Hot Pizza Ass Podcast. I was introduced to your show by my mom over the pandemic, and I became obsessed with it. I can't tell you how many nights you have read me to sleep.
I'm so glad to hear it. And I am so glad your mom was watching out for you. That's like a really nice way to get that referral.
Yeah, no, it really is super sweet. I didn't know how she got into sleep podcasts, but it was a really good suggestion. And I'm so glad. But I'm so curious about, how did you get into all of this in the first place? Like, how did you get into sleep podcasting and writing stories for this venue?
It came in a couple different directions. One is that I have always told myself bedtime stories since I was like 4 years old. I grew up in Flint, Michigan, and in the 80s, it was Flint is in the news a lot now, and there are a lot of things about living in Flint that are difficult, but that was always true in the 80s as well. And I think that it probably evolved out of a sense of need of me needing to feel safe, because I probably was not safe. And as safe as my parents could make our home, but it was a rough time to live where I lived, and I probably could feel that. So I think I looked for ways to help create an environment for myself in which I could fall asleep. Also, I was just a kid with a big imagination. I loved the idea that I could go anywhere when I closed my eyes, and kind of wondered why we weren't all doing it all the time. You could imagine anything. So I've always told myself bedtime stories. And because of that, I have a really well-trained brain for sleep. I sleep well. I go back to sleep easily. And I've used it my whole life. And then being a yoga teacher, which was my full-time job for most of my life, I would hear from my students and other people, my friends and family, just talking to me saying, God, I can't sleep. I'm so anxious. I wake up in the middle of the night. I can't get my brain to turn off. And I kept thinking, how do I get this from me to you? I know how to do this. Mm-hmm. How do I teach you to do this? And because I had, from all my yoga training, lots of understanding of like mindfulness and how to use my senses to make myself present, and how to create an environment where relaxation was going to be the most automatic response. I feel like all those things came together, and I thought it might be a book. I hoped it would be, but just, being a lay person with no like connection to the publishing industry, that just sounds impossible. So I kind of put it on a shelf for a while. And then one night, I remember my dog was up in the middle of the night sick, and I was up with her, and I was sitting on the floor with my beagle on my lap. It was like 3:00 in the morning. And I thought, oh, it's a podcast. It's a podcast. And I remember like scrolling through Amazon and buying a microphone, and we launched like 2 months later.
Oh my gosh. How many years ago was that?
That was in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've been at it, that we just starting season 9 in January.
That's incredible. And I feel like, I mean, I was introduced to your work during the pandemic, and I'm curious, what has the journey been from 2017 till now? Are you finding new listenership? Because of course, this is a very, very stressful time. I'm sure there's a lot of people losing sleep right now.
Yeah, yeah. We our listenership doubled during the pandemic. So
Wow.
we hear from people all over the world, and we are hearing from people. I mean, it's great to hear new listeners every day. People who say, "I've just found this. I haven't slept in 6 months, and I slept 8 hours a night for a whole week, and it changed my life." So and the thing is that, I think we're at a point where we realize the pandemic isn't stopping.
Mhm.
And even if it did, like, there's a buffet of things to worry about. So we're going to need long-term solutions here, ways to give ourselves a soft landing at the end of the day. So yeah, we hear from more and more people all the time.
And how did this lead to a book?
We have children's storybooks for bedtime, and they're beautiful. They have illustrations. Why don't we have these for adults? Why is this something that we should not have? I could never wrap my head around that. And I always thought, like, I love to read, and I always read before bed. But sometimes the things I would read would be really stimulating or really anxiety producing. And, I love a good thriller or something, but then I would turn my light off and try to figure out where to put my brain in order to then fall asleep. I couldn't do it. And I kept thinking there needs to be like a bridge where there's the rest of the world, and then there's a bridge into my nighttime routine. And so I pitched this idea for a book of my bedtime stories. I knew that I wanted it to be illustrated. I knew I wanted it to have a map in the front, because I think of all my stories as existing in the same village, the village of nothing much. And I wanted people to see where the bakery is and where, all these little spots that they know are. So we pitched the idea, and we sold it in 34 countries.
I love that so much. And I also love the idea of the village of nothing much because, well, first of all, when I started listening to your podcast, and your stories are just so lovely and charming. And anyone that's listening that hasn't, listened to her show, go listen to it. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about, but they're just so thoughtful. You put so much love into them. And that's so cute to imagine, like, the little town where it all happens. And by the way, I like knew you were from Michigan. I just like, and then when I found out that you were, it was so validating. I was like, of course she's from Michigan. You got the lake, you got the inn. I have family there. So I was like, this is a Michigan person. I know it.
Yeah, and I write for the seasons,
Yeah.
that's a big part of the show. So a lot of times people will identify and go like, where were you? Where is this? And I'll keep reminding them, these are fiction. And they'll be like, no, but where is the inn? I'm like, oh, sweetheart. It's in my head. But, it is based very much on Michigan. I spent a lot of time in Saugatuck on the west coast of Michigan, on Lake Michigan, and you just can't beat it. It's so gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you get inspired for these stories? How do you know what's going to make a good sleep story?
I do have sort of a formula. I always think of, first, it needs to be a premise that feels relaxing, inherently relaxing premise. And then it needs to have an element of relatability, of familiarity, and maybe even nostalgia. Even if it's not something you yourself have done, if you hear about it, you can relate to it really easily and think, yeah, that sounds good. I want to do that. And then the third element is lots of sensory details, because that's what keeps us present. So I'm always telling readers how things smell and feel and taste, so that they can imagine themselves in the stories. And there's a couple other elements I always consider too. I never use gender pronouns in any romantic relationship. So, a lot of times people will say, are these stories about you? And I always say, if you like to think they are, you can, but no, they're actually about you. The idea is that you see yourself in the story, and whatever your life is like. I write stories about single people and coupled people and people with a lot of friends, and usually people who have kids peripheral to their life, not necessarily their own kids, but that way that people can just sort of say, yes, I could imagine myself in that spot. And I think that's what really allows people to kind of pull the blanket of the story around them and feel really held, which is my intention, that they feel held and just like they landed someplace where they are safe and they can let things go.
Yeah. And what's interesting is there's so many beautiful little details in the stories, as you were talking about, that when I listen to them, sometimes I'm like, I actually just want to listen to the story. I'm like, I know I'm supposed to fall asleep, but I actually am really, really very much enjoying this. Do you have a favorite story or one that people like the most?
I have a couple that I really, really love. I just put out an episode called The Innkeeper's Holiday. I really love her storyline. There's an episode called Fireflies on a Summer Night that is like way back season 3. There's usually 1 or 2 episodes a season where there's just something slightly magical in the story. And those ones always really resonate and feel really personal to me. And that's true for my Firefly story. But, it's really, it's sort of a relief as a writer when I'm sometimes wrestling with a sentence or a concept. And then I just remind myself, babe, they're all asleep. No one can hear you. Just write what you want. Like, I remind myself, I take the pressure off, but also as an artist, and I realize as the years have gone by that my creative engine has really kicked into gear. There are times when I do get sort of disappointed that maybe people won't hear it.
Yeah, no, and you have like puns. Sometimes you have jokes in there. Do you put stuff in just to see if people catch it?
Yeah, and there's tons of Easter eggs. The episodes almost always overlap with 2 or 3 other episodes, and there's callbacks and stuff. And sometimes people will tell me, well, I listen at night, but then I'll try to listen again in the morning while I'm drinking my coffee to actually hear the episode. Because a lot of people tell me the longer they listen, they fall asleep so fast that they're asleep before the story's even started. I'm just talking them through the intro. I barely said my name. They're out.
But I have a question. So in the episode First Frost, you talk about decorative cabbages and a stupid night, which I had to listen to it like 3 times when I heard it. I was like, wait a second, what? Did she just say decorative cabbages and a stupid night? What happened on this night? Why was it stupid? And I had to ask you what happened on this night and what are decorative cabbages?
Decorative cabbages are a thing. That's what? Like you plant them in the fall and they're like giant cabbages and kale. And in places where it frosts, people have them until like November and they're beautiful and they're like green and purple. And a lot of people ask me about the stupid night because it was a problem with my enunciation. It was out on the stoop at night.
Oh no, really?
Yes. A couple people were like, that's a really strange choice you made. And I was like, what? And I had to listen to it myself. I was like, wow, I don't think I would have written this. This doesn't sound familiar. I checked with Bob. He was like, maybe you could have just cleaned up your pronunciation.
Oh my God. I can't tell you how many times I went back and I was like, wait a second, hold on. This does not seem on brand, but okay. Yeah. The stoop at night. I'm going to re-listen to it again.
Maybe I'll have Bob just fix it. Maybe I'll re-record it because I don't want to keep you up.
Do a re-release.
Yes.
So how did you find your sleep talk voice? Because as I've listened from the beginning to now, there's definitely been a change. How did you find it?
Part of it is, being a yoga teacher, I feel like I already had like a grasp on where my voice needed to land for people to be able to listen to it in a way that felt like, I always feel like you want to be like a knife in a stream of water where you go with the water and you don't cut across it. So as a yoga teacher, whenever people come into yoga, even if they're choosing it wholeheartedly, there's often some part of them that resists. So if you can figure out a way to go with your student to a destination and not clash with them, that's a really powerful tool to develop as a teacher. And I did it full time for 20 years. So I started to get pretty good at it. And I started to just notice like where to put my voice. I was a theater student in college and I had some training in that. So I could find this place where people could hear me, but they really felt like I wasn't interrupting them at all. And we were all in a good place going in the right direction. And then with the podcast, I just sort of started with my yoga teacher voice. And then as time went on, it just evolved naturally that I felt a little bit more like I wanted to make it quieter. And still, because I'm a woman speaking in the world, I get criticized for it. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to please everybody. But I feel like it's at a place now where people some listeners are like so sensitive to it that if I pause for an extra second, they let me know.
Oh, really? Yes. They let you know?
Yes. Yeah, sometimes people, I mean, I get that it's like becomes like this very important part of their bedtime routine, so sometimes they'll just, they'll be like, you are a little low. You're a little too low last week.
They let you know. Oh my God.
And I know. And so that's a moment for me to like practice not being defensive and just going, okay, thank you.
Thanks for the feedback.
Thank you for the feedback.
So is the key to it to like keep your voice like very still, like no animation really? Is that kind of like the key?
A little up and down, or else you need, it's definitely like a small margin.
Yeah.
Because you want to give their ear something to catch on to. A lot of times people will say, when I tell them what I do, if they've never heard of sleep podcasts, they'll say, oh, well, just so it's like listening to something boring. And I'm like, no, that actually doesn't work. And it's not pleasant and you deserve better. You shouldn't listen to something boring, sweetheart. You deserve to have a beautiful bridge take you to bedtime. But if it's too gripping, even the sound of my voice, if there's too much intonation up and down, it will wake people up. But also if there isn't enough, then there's not enough for their ear to hold on to. There just has to be a little bit of grippiness. So I don't know that I could explain it much better than that, but it's just, as I'm reading, I'm actually thinking about it, reading it, and then I'm just turning down any kind of natural reactivity I would have in my voice by like 80%.
Yeah. And it's like, there's like it's like a slight whisper.
Yeah.
It's not like a whisper, but it's kind of like very gentle and quiet.
You can do it, Erin.
Yeah. I need to learn how to do this. I feel like that would come in handy, definitely in certain times in life. Probably if you have to, I don't know. Do you ever use the voice for anything else? Do you use it like when you're talking to your credit card company or something like that? And like, you're like, what is this feeling? Can you help me?
Actually, I think I use it like for myself because it puts me in a place where I'm really calm. So I feel like I have like my own Pavlovian response to it where I get really calm. So if I'm trying to like have a difficult conversation, I can kind of go here. I think for my wife and my friends, they're like, we know what you're doing.
Stop with the sleep voice.
Not going to work on us. And I'm like, no, it's for me.
I need this right now.
Yes. It's a choice for myself.
I love that. There's so many moments of little wisdom, like little sentences that I've pulled. I was actually thinking about you today because I wasn't feeling very well. I was telling Kathryn before we started recording that I got my third booster shot, not third booster, but my booster shot, my third shot. And I've been feeling very not great, but I've been trying to work and I didn't want to cancel this podcast. I was like, I want to try to do some stuff, but take it easy. And then I remember a Kathryn Nicolai quote where you said, and tell me if I'm butchering it, but rest is the best gentle medicine.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like me. I think that was in the summer storm episode that came out this summer when I was really thinking about that myself a lot, because it's one of those simple forms of medicine that we often forget about. And, there are lots of forces pushing on us to move faster and do more. And so it's not always an option for all of us to slow down and stop. But when we can, We really need to. I always kind of describe myself as having lots of sloth energy. Like that's just naturally how I show up in the world. My wife is like a hummingbird, and I am a sloth. And I don't struggle at all to lay down and do nothing. It's not hard for me at all. But I would see it a lot in yoga when I would teach, and we'd come to the end of class and take our shavasana. And for some people, that was the hardest part of the practice, was to lay down and let themselves rest. So those are the kind of messages I'm always trying to gently enforce with my stories. I feel like there's like a little bit of your subconscious, some conscious that I could speak to in those moments where I can just plant a seed and remind people to be gentle with themselves and to rest when they need rest, to pay attention to the world as it arises around them, to look for small things to take pleasure in. I feel like just day to day, this adds up to better living.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And those are all the themes that I get from listening to your podcast too. I feel like, the attention to detail, taking the pleasure in really small moments, whether it's, taking a nap or cuddling up on the couch with your dog or that first sip of coffee in the morning, these little things that we so often just blow past. But in the podcast, it's like you'll take this small moment and you'll just like glamorize it and build a whole little, a 10-minute experience around just this one small idea. And I love that. I was like, oh my God, I just want to live in this world. This is so lovely and charming. I just want to be here.
I'm glad it feels that way. I think I built it because I wanted to live there too.
Yeah.
I want to be in that world too. And so I think that's one of the really nice things that I didn't see coming about the podcast, is that it would build such a community around it of people who felt that, like I'm somebody who values gentleness. Like there are other people that value gentleness. That's amazing. I'm all these like points of connection that people identify around, and then the community that it builds. And so, people who listen sometimes identify themselves as like living in the village of nothing much. And, we'll talk about, that they went to the bakery and they did this or that, and they saw the 4 old grandfathers sitting at the coffee shop that everyone's, adopted in their brains to be their own grandfathers and stuff. And that part, that always blows me away. I'm so glad to take everybody with me.
Yeah, I feel like you created the Lord of the Rings of sleep podcasts. Like I had no idea that this whole world was connected and there's Easter eggs and there's a whole thing going on here. And now I need to like re-listen and start from the beginning. Another thing that I really love in that particular episode that we were just talking about with the gentle rest is that you kind of mentioned that rest is kind of like when you're thirsty and you don't wait till you're thirsty to have a drink, or you wouldn't do that all day. You'd be like, I'm just going to do it at the end of the day. No, like you're thirsty, you would drink something.
Yeah.
And we don't treat rest like that at all. And I was like, damn, that is so true.
It's a game-changing idea when you think about it like that. We don't ever go, I'm so thirsty, but let me just see if I can get by on a sip. We would never do that. We recognize drinking plenty of water is good for us. Why would I hold back? Why would I try to get through the day? Why would I ever feel guilty about it?
Yeah.
And that was something that I found often as a yoga teacher, watching people practice and seeing them move past their edge, because that voice in their head always said, it's not enough, push, push, push. And I kept thinking, how can I help them understand it in a different way? So that was something I started saying in yoga was, when we would come into child's pose and see people take a sip of water, I thought, smart, you heard your body, you took a sip of water, groovy. If it's saying stay here for the next 5 minutes, why on earth would you not? Mm-hmm. But, like I said, there's a lot of voices in the world telling us to move faster. So I'm really glad to have my voice out there, just kind of gently calling people back home to the intuitive understanding of their own bodies. Your body will tell you, it'll tell you when it needs more food and when it needs more rest. And it could be different every day because you're not a math equation and you're not a robot. You're an organic being. And so every day you'll have different needs and you never have to feel bad about it.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you have this POV and you have the platform that you have and you're putting this into the world, because I think especially with social media, we're in this world of constant comparison, constant hustle. And I get that, like people built entire brands around that, but I think we see too much of it. And the truth is we don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. and do 20 things on a to-do list every single day. And we don't have to work 9 to 5. So then afterwards build your business from 5 to 9. And, like life does not have to be that way. If you want it to be that way, no shame in that game. But I'm glad that you are talking about these things in the way that you are. And it's a form of entertainment, but like you said, it's like you have the subconscious mind. You have these really beautiful themes that I think remind people to slow down, take time, enjoy life, and things that have nothing to do with hustle culture.
Yeah, you don't have to be productive. And I feel like a lot of times when we get sucked into that high speed, kind of lifestyle, there can be just sort of like make a rule and then make a religion out of it. That, where, like you said, I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to get 20 things done. I do it every single day. I mean, I lived that way for a while and I didn't find a lot of meaning or satisfaction in it. And to me, meaning is really important, but I do find a lot of meaning in the small moments of my day. That's where I find meaning in life. And it can be different for everybody, like you said, but to me, that's always been something that was important to me as a teacher, was to think about like, what's your why? If you're just running to run, at some point that's going to be really unsatisfying. But find the why of it. And for me, what propels me through the day is that I am steadily fascinated. Like you asked me, where do I get my ideas? I'm constantly fascinated by small experiences. And I think part of that is just having been a yoga teacher for so long, where I really trained myself to watch each moment evolve and notice what my senses had to show me, so that I catch all these little moments through the day and think, oh, that's going in a story. That's a story. And for me, that gives my day a whole lot of meaning.
Yeah. Would you ever put a pizza shop in the Village of Nothing Much?
There is one.
There is one?
Yeah.
Wait, what episode is this?
It's a skating episode from like 2 winters ago. And they go and skate at the rink out in front of like the city plaza. And then they go eat pizza, like a big bunch of friends who do it together every single winter.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So hot pizza ass listeners would appreciate that. Go to the pizza place in the skating episode. Do you have any advice for maybe having better sleep or transitioning from daytime to rest time? What have you learned over the years is the most effective?
Sure. Some things I want to say is just like, go easy on yourself. If you find yourself really struggling to put down your devices, it is not your fault. They are designed to make you feel that way. And you are living in this world now. So I think first, like, take any shame off the table. If you feel like, oh my God, I can't stop scrolling. I'm keep looking at TikTok or Instagram or whatever. Okay. Everybody's in the same boat here. I think if that has become a big habit, the best way to replace it is with a habit that you enjoy even more if possible. I always think writing pleasure into these experiences is the smartest way to make behavioral changes. Shame doesn't work. Maybe it works for a little bit of time, but it stinks and it doesn't work forever. You can only make yourself do stuff you don't enjoy doing for so long. So I really think about building my bedtime routine about things that make me feel good, that I look forward to. So usually if I feel really busy headed, I'll do like a 5-minute download where I will actually set a timer and just journal for 5 minutes. Anything that bubbles up, anything that I feel like it's too much buzzing in my head, I'll just write it down. And then because it exists on the paper, I don't have to hold it anymore. Mm-hmm. And that gives me some free space. And then, I usually will read. That's when I go for like so-called guilty pleasure reads, which is bullshit anyway. If there's something you enjoy, you just go right ahead and enjoy it. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about it.
Right?
Because that's just an elitist nonsense idea. You like something, baby, like it. But maybe there are like books that you've read a million times, but they give you a great feeling when you read them, or songs that are cheesy, but they help you relax at the end of the day, or they just boost your serotonin. And then maybe you like to have I have hot chocolate a lot at bedtime because I like it. I look forward to it. It's part of my routine. I cuddle my dog. I talk to my wife. I, put lotion on. I do all those kind of things that make me feel good. And I look forward to, and that helps me set down the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have something pleasant to look forward to, you will just keep on scrolling and keep on worrying and keep on texting. There's nothing to interrupt you. So I think you got to build a new path, and it's got to be one that you really like.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's really, really good advice. And then, of course, listen to Nothing Much Happens when you're ready to go to sleep.
I mean, that's really the design of Nothing Much too, is that it's going to make you feel good. That's what I say right at the beginning, right? Nothing much happens, you feel good, and then you fall asleep. But that middle part's really important.
Yeah.
Because, when you think about how much we're exposed to as far as information every day, I sometimes think about this, like my ancestors, like my 5 times great grandmother. By like 10 o'clock in the morning, I probably saw more images today than she saw in her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken in so much information today. My brains we're not built to hold all this stuff. And then, of course, the stuff that really sticks, because we've got that negativity bias of the brain, the stuff that really sticks for us is the scariest stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we give the most weight to. That's what we pay most attention to. So you really have to kind of lean pretty heavy into the other side. I always think that it's kind of like when you highlight good things happening, that isn't putting on rose-colored glasses. That's actually taking off the gray ones, because our negativity bias makes us give more weight to upsetting information. So our brain's already giving us a slightly biased view of the world. So we have to deliberately go look for something good to show us what the world actually is. So that's what the stories are meant to do. They're just there to gently go, look, this is good. This is good.
This is good. Pay attention to this.
Yeah, look over here.
I love that. And so what advice would you give like a younger version of you that, maybe hasn't learned all of the lessons that you've learned at this point about rest and relaxation and focusing on the good?
Yeah. That's tricky, because I feel like younger me I had eating disorders for most of my life and was an obsessive compulsive exerciser and was terrible to myself for many years. I don't think I could have spoken to her.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't hearing anything. So sometimes, unfortunately, we just have to wait for the blessing of another year to pass to be able to have like the maturity and the space to hear good advice or be able to put it into play. So I think mostly when I think of my younger self who was afraid to write, I didn't start writing till 2017. And my dream, my whole life since I was 8 years old, was to write a book. But I was afraid who would want to read it. I wasn't good enough, all that sort of thing. Afraid to rest, afraid to ever stop tracking everything that I did and ate and moved, all that toxic behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the message there is just, hang on.
Yeah.
Hold on, babe. Give yourself time, because it will make more sense later. And I think of that now when there are things that I struggle with, that, wait a minute. Give yourself a little bit more time and you'll have a better grasp. You'll understand more. So I think the lesson there is mostly about persistence. Do what you need to do to get to the next day, because there's more to come.
Wow. Yeah, I can relate to a lot of the things that you said. I've been on similar journeys too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had great tools. I did like 10-day meditations and, I had excellent teachers and stuff, but sometimes, the buildup of the noise of the world, so dense, it took me a really long time to cut through, even with super sharp tools.
You meditated for 10 days?
Yeah.
Like straight? Like
Yeah,
you wake up and what?
12 hours a day. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I did. It's called Vipassana. It's a traditional Buddhist style of meditation. And you go and it's actually like 12 days because you get there and then it's day 0. And then you sit for 10 days and then they make you spend one more night. And it's complete silence, not only not speaking, but no eye contact, no reading, no writing, no touch. So you are really inside your body and learning how to relearn basically what we would now call interoception, which is what you feel in your body when you experience certain thoughts or emotions, right? We're thinking about this so much now, you're hearing more and more, and I'm so glad we are, about embodiment, about how to feel your emotions, that there's sort of a thumbprint of emotion inside your body. There's always a physical sensation that's connected to everything you feel and think. And that when you can learn to read those signals, you get sort of a spidey sense for your own emotional intelligence. You also understand other people better, but you can see yourself when you're spiraling down a reactive corridor, or you're doing the same thing you always did, even though you keep meaning not to, because it's not helping. You find the patterns in your own behavior. And I did that when I was like 24, and then would like go back and do like 3-day tune-ups every couple of years, and then like a 12-hour here or there. But I had a lot of, I still clung to a lot of bad behavior. It just took time for me to find a way around it.
The discipline though, of doing, I don't think I could do that. I also don't think I could even just be quiet for 10 days.
It is really difficult. I won't say it isn't difficult. It's physically painful. And I remember when I went to my first 10-day, I had my dad drop me off because I thought, well, I can't leave. It was out in the middle of the country in Michigan. Like I couldn't have left. And I remember when you get there, they ask you to if you drove yourself, to turn in your car keys, and they say, we'll give them back, but we don't want you to leave in the middle of the night. Just tell us that you're leaving. And I was kind of glad I didn't have an option.
Like there's people that are just like, I gotta go. Get me out of here.
People regularly, like I remember my roommate left on like day 4. She was like, and I was like, yeah.
She was like, where's the local bar? I need to go.
It is very, very intense. Yeah. But it was also really, even though I still had a long way to go on my journey back to myself, it took like a big step there. And I came out like very blissed out for like a solid year after that.
Whoa. Okay. So it's a 10-day commitment, but you'll feel good for a year.
I'm just planting the seed. Think about it, Erin.
Okay. I'll think about it. That's incredible though. I love this. I think that's definitely a challenge. But yeah, I find so much joy from your podcast. I'm so glad that so many people love it. Out of curiosity, what is your listenership like?
Like number of downloads.
Yeah. Like how many people are in the village of nothing much?
A lot. I think by the end of the year, we'll be 65 million downloads.
Oh my gosh. Congratulations.
Thank you. And of course, that's not 65 million individuals. Would that it were, but because lots of people listen to multiple episodes every single night. But, that's a lot of people. And it just happened for the first time that I was in a store a couple of days ago, and they kept asking me to say my name because I was like in their system. And I said it like 2 or 3 times because they were spelling it wrong. And the girl behind the other register kept looking at me. And then they said, well, tell me your email address. And so I said, at nothing much happens. And she was like, oh my God. Oh my God. You're the lady.
Kathryn.
It was the first time it had happened. It's, nobody knows what I look like, which is good because I can just kind of move through the world and people don't know who I am. But it was just kind of funny because it was like a couple blocks from my house. And she was just like, she said the same thing as you. I knew you were from Michigan.
Yeah. I knew you were from Michigan.
And a lot of queer people say the same thing. They'll look me up and they'll go, I just knew you were gay. I'm like, you can just feel the safety, that you come here and you're safe with me.
Yeah. I definitely feel safe.
That's my job every day, and I take it seriously.
It's a dream job.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
It
I
is
like
a
that.
dream job. Bob would be shuddering at our puns, but yes.
By the way, I love your merch. I don't know anyone that has podcast merch that gives a shout out to their audio engineer.
But as soon as I said it and I put like a picture out, people were like, why do I feel this way about Bob Wittersheim? I've never heard his voice, but like when I hear his name, I just like feel really good. And I was like, he's just a good guy and you can just hear it. So people go crazy for that.
You can just tell. Yeah. So if you guys don't know her merch, she has a hoodie that says audio engineered by Bob Wittersheim. If you know, you know. And I was like, this is so funny. It's like such an inside joke.
I know.
If you know, you know.
No, you know.
I love it. And thank you so much for joining us on Hot Pizza Ass podcast. This has been so much fun meeting you and talking to you about your whole journey and your dream job.
It has been my pleasure, Erin, and welcome back to the Hot Pizza Ass podcast. I know you've been away for a while, so I'm really glad you're back.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to another episode of Hot Pizza Ass Podcast. This is the last episode of the year, so I need to give a big thank you to everyone who has listened, supported, and to everyone on Patreon, most importantly. Patreon.com/ErinDarling is where you can go, where for as little as $5 a month, you can help support this podcast. And I appreciate every single person who has been there and who has listened to Hot Pizza Ass. Please feel free to share this with someone because that's another big way that we can grow, and rate and review the podcast on iTunes. Thank you so much once more. Love you from the bottom of my heart. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. This is Erin Darling Turalva, and you're listening to Hot Pizza Ass.